Welcome to Beat Diabetes. Today we're going to attempt to answer the question, why is not the low-carb dietary intervention to diabetes the standard of care among all medical professionals? I read a comment, I think it was today, and it was just so rich, and I just felt like I had to add a few of my own comments to it. This is from one of our challenge partners who says this: as I was coming to terms with my numbers after my big win with the A1C at the doctor's office. So love that, a big win with his A1C. I asked him, that is, I asked the doctor, why is this low-carb diet not the standard of care? In other words, why doesn't everybody encourage diabetics to eat low carb? I was on the edge, he says, of being indignant, but I truly wanted to know. The doctor told me, I can't get them to put down the pizza and the donuts. So basically he was saying, yeah, it probably ought to be the standard of care, but you're just not going to get very many people to do the low-carb diet. It was at that moment, this individual writes, I realized I too was that person. Until we decide in our own way, we simply won't step away from the carbs. I cut mine off at the knees and dropped from 12.1 as an A1C down to 5.4 in 90 days. Wow, wow, wow. 12.1 down to 5.4 in 3 months. How, he says? By limiting my carbs to good ones and staying under 60 to 80 grams a day. That's not that hard. Then I stepped it to high gear, and I've been staying under 20 to 30 grams per day. No wheat, potatoes, rice, or such. I'm down about 20 pounds since I started this, and into the next smaller pant waist size. So, to the people that say you can't, you're correct, but when you get tired enough of getting the same non-results, then perhaps you will change your mindset and do what is needed. So I wanted to throw my 2 cents in. I thought that was kind of interesting. The doctor essentially said, well, yeah, the low-carb intervention ought to be the standard of care for diabetics, but you just can't get them to change. Not sure that's really a satisfactory answer, although he's at least partly right. I think part of it shows that he doesn't quite get it, though, because he says, I can't get them to put down the pizza and the donuts. Well, the problem is it takes more than putting down pizza and donuts. It also takes putting down some of the so-called good carbs like sweet potatoes and brown rice and quinoa and oatmeal and all the so-called healthy breakfast cereals. So when he's thinking about donuts and pizza, he's not really grasping the whole story. So most likely he doesn't quite get it himself. But let me just say, even if doctors truly knew that a low-carb diet would fix diabetes and its complications, if they knew that, then they would owe it to their patients to at least try to warn them. This doctor is saying, well, they're not going to change. I couldn't get them to put them down, so I'll just keep my mouth shut and hand them a metformin or hand them this medication or that medication or maybe some insulin. You at least got to try. If you know enough to realize the answer, you owe it to them to at least tell them. Then it's on them whether they do it or not. So that's my first response. Even if you're saying, well, yeah, but I know you, my patient, I know you'll never do it, so why should I even tell you? Well, you just do. It's kind of like me preaching Christ in Africa and doing evangelism. I know some of those people, probably the majority, are not going to respond. They're going to just go on their merry way. But for the sake of the ones that will respond, I owe it to them to share Christ. So doctors owe it to their diabetic patients to share the truth if they know it. Now, many don't know it, and the reason is they rely on what they've been taught. They went to medical school. And when you go to school, particularly a college or a university or a medical school in this case, you go there as a young person, right? Most doctors don't get into medical school at the age of 45. They're usually fairly young. And you go there thinking that the people who are going to be teaching you know a whole lot more than you do, and that's generally true. But when it comes to nutrition, they may not know much at all, but you assume they do. You assume these are the experts, these are the professionals, these are the teachers who are training the brightest minds in the country, and I need to take notes and listen carefully to what they say. And generally speaking, that's exactly right. They are expert, they are professionals, they do know a lot. But when it comes to nutrition, they don't. And one of the reasons we can see that so easily is they don't focus much on nutrition in medical school. Most medical schools have just short little classes, or maybe no classes, maybe just a few lectures. I've never been to medical school, but from what I've heard, nutrition is not a big deal in medical school. So if you don't know, you can't share it with others. Most medical training has to do with the various diseases, how they come about, how to diagnose them, the proper medicines. And generally speaking, when most people go to the doctor, it's like, I know what's wrong with me, or here are my symptoms. Would you please give me a medicine to take care of me? That has been our traditional idea of the purpose of doctors. Here's what's wrong. And a lot of cases we already know. I've got the flu, or I've got bronchitis, or whatever. Sometimes we don't know, but I've got these symptoms. And if we don't know, the doctor's supposed to tell us, here's what it is, and here's what you take. And so he writes out the prescription, sends you to the pharmacy, you take the pills, you get better. I mean, that is our view of doctors. Sometimes surgery is needed. So he diagnoses you and says, you're going to need a surgery. You show up on the proper day, have your surgery, you get better. We're not in the tradition in America yet of doctors giving a lot of nutritional advice and saying your diet's doing this to you and you need to change your diet. Very rare would that be the case. Now, here's another problem with the doctors. They don't have a lot of time with their patients. A lot of doctors are seeing, well, I don't know how many, 20 patients a day, 25 patients a day. They're seeing so many, their schedule is so filled with one patient after another, and usually you end up getting behind, and so you've got a 2 p.m. appointment, and the doctor sees you at 3:15 or 4. So they don't have a lot of time. They are coming in, they are assessing your situation quickly, figuring out what kind of medicine you need, or what you need to do, or if you need surgery, or if you need to go to some kind of an expert in that particular field, and they send you on your way. They just don't have the time. The idea of a doctor sitting down beside you and talking to you for 40 minutes, mighty rare. And you can't blame them. They're trying to make a living, and they've got a lot of patients to see, so they just can't do it. And that's one advantage that the YouTube doctors and the YouTube nutritionists and guys like me have over the doctors that are just your family practice doctors, and they will see you in their clinic or in their office once every 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. Like, I've got over 300 videos you can watch, and you can take your time, and I've been cranking them out a couple a week, and you can just spend all kinds of time with me talking to you about diabetes and talking to you about the low-carb diet and talking to you about all kinds of issues related to diabetes. I've got a far greater amount of time I have available through my videos. So most doctors don't have that. Now, the YouTube doctors do. Jason Fung, you can watch him for hours. You can watch Dr. Ken Berry for hours. The diet doctor, Dr. Eric Westman. These kind of YouTube doctors, some of them have patients and some don't. But these guys or gals, there's a Dr. Boz that's very strong into the keto diet. These people have plenty of time through their videos, so you can get exposed. Now, here's the thing. Even if the doctor does know what to say and he says, I can help you get over that diabetes. I can help you reverse your numbers, reverse your complications. You will feel so much better. Here's what you do. You eat a low-carb diet. You give up all the candy, the sugary treats, all the foods that have a lot of added sugar with them. You give up the rice, potatoes, all the starches, the breakfast cereal, the pasta. And he basically gives you the lowdown. You should start focusing on more fat in your diet, more protein in your diet, far less carbs. I'd say maybe 50 grams of carbs per day, not per meal like you used to hear, but per day, or maybe less than that, maybe even 20. They could tell you that, but if that's all you got and they ramble off the recipe for beating diabetes in about 10 minutes and then you leave, you're probably not going to be convinced and not going to be motivated to actually do it. It takes more. There is a Bible verse that says, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. And basically, there are a couple of meanings to that. One had to do with the Old Testament judicial laws. You would have to have more than one witness, but the Apostle Paul used it in connection with the fact that you have to hear things again and again in order to really get it. The advertising world knows this. When I was younger, there used to be a commercial that would run on television ad nauseum, just constantly, that featured Mr. Whipple. And he would tell he was a grocery store clerk, and he would tell all the people coming into the store, don't squeeze the Charmin, because they'd always be by the Charmin bathroom tissue squeezing it. It was supposed to be so soft and so wonderful that you couldn't help but squeeze it. They made, I don't know how many, I think over 100 different commercials. They played them almost nonstop. You could hardly watch TV for an hour without seeing Mr. Whipple telling people not to squeeze the Charmin. Now, why didn't they just make one commercial and have it last for a month? Why that ad campaign went on for like 20 years. Mr. Whipple grew old before our eyes. Why do they do that? They know there is power in repetition. And still today, we don't have Mr. Whipple anymore, but the commercials, they understand that. These companies, they understand it. If we will keep repeating it and keep saying it and keep saying it, you will eventually believe it and you'll be motivated to go out and buy our product. There's no way you can go to a doctor and he says, change your life in a huge way, give up most of your carbohydrates and do the keto thing. Even if he's right on and he knows exactly what to say, a 5-minute talk will probably not do the job. And that's why you have to have repetition. And that's why here at Beat Diabetes, our YouTube channel, we get testimony after testimony after testimony, not because I'm smarter than the doctors, and I'm certainly not a doctor, but I can keep saying it and saying it. I use all kinds of different ways. I bring people on, I interview them and they share their story. I use illustrations. I quote studies, I quote books that I've read. I just hit you from every angle with this good news that you can beat diabetes, and here's how you do it. And I often hear people say, I started binge watching your videos. And when I read that, I know they're on their way to success. They're on their way to victory. They are binge watching. They're getting it. And all that truth and all of that hope is going to get into their heart, and they will have the willingness. But had a doctor told them essentially the same thing in 5 minutes' time in their office, they probably wouldn't have gotten it. So you gotta be persuaded. You gotta be motivated. You have to be persuaded of the proper way to go, which is a low-carb diet, time-restricted eating, quit all your snacking. So you've got to be persuaded that's the right way to go. And secondly, you got to be motivated, and by being exposed to good books, like books by Jason Fung. I've written several books. Dr. Ken Berry's got a book out, and there's good books. There's all kinds of YouTube videos, but you got to watch the right ones. If you watch the wrong ones, it won't do you much good. But anyway, keep exposing yourself to the truth. Remember the principle, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, things get established. By repetition, repetition, repetition. Let me say it again, repetition. Things get established, and you get motivated and you get persuaded. So you get basically the 2 key ingredients to beat diabetes. Number 1, you're persuaded of the way to go. And then number 2, you're motivated. So what can doctors do for their patients? Well, they need to tell them the truth, even if they know that a 10-minute talk is not maybe going to do the whole job. They at least owe it to them to tell them the truth if they know it. Now, sadly, some doctors don't know the truth. And all they can say is lose a little weight and watch your sugar. Lose a little weight and watch your sugar. That's been the most common advice doctors have given, and it never works. Just watching your sugar is not enough, and just cutting out your sugar is not enough. And losing weight, well, that'll come naturally if you'll just go to the right kind of a diet. So give them the resources. Now, I've decided to do my little part to help the doctors. And the reason I can help a few doctors, not many, is I've got all kinds of resources. These people can access me when I'm sleeping, when I'm on vacation, when I'm driving around town, when I'm in Africa. They can access me through my 300 plus videos. And I have compiled 2 series of what I consider to be the most important videos that a newly diagnosed diabetic needs. And you can order these. I mean, you can get them free. I'm not saying you can't. You can go to YouTube and you can find them. But the problem is there are so many videos, it's easy to get lost. And some are better than others, I'll have to admit. And some are more fundamental than others. So I put together 2 series. One's called Diabetes Emergency Kit, and the other's called More Fundamentals of Beating Diabetes. So you can buy these if you're an ordinary person, and they're not very expensive. They're like $22 a piece. But for you doctors that watch this channel and believe in what I'm saying, and you're telling patients yourself, here is a resource you can give to your patients. Now, if you want, you can buy them. But if you say, well, Dennis, I'm not sure I want to buy them, if you'll just send me an email and let me know you want to use them, I'll send you a link and enable you to use them, and I will give you permission to copy them, and you can put them on flash drives and hand it to your patients and just tell them, put this on your computer or in your Roku box and watch these videos, and you can check them out. And if you say, well, I like most of these, but there's about 5 or 6 I don't agree with, then delete those and give them the ones you like. Here's a chance. Most of you doctors don't have time to make videos like these. And I do have time. So if you're a medical doctor and you would like to make use of some of my videos, and like I said, some of them are more fundamental and more important than others, send me an email, grace@spiritofgrace.org, grace@spiritofgrace.org, and say, I'm a medical doctor. I would love for my patients to have access to your videos, and I will send you a link that you can download them, and again, full permission to make copies of them and just hand them out by the dozens, by the scores, by the hundreds. My blessing to you and to your patients. I really want to see diabetics beat diabetes. And even though in that case I won't make money, God will take care of me. I do charge a little bit for the non-doctors. You can see a link in the description for these 2 series, Diabetes Emergency Kit and More Fundamentals of Beating Diabetes. I plan to do another series about the different foods, what to eat, what not to eat, and that'll be coming up. So anyway, resources, motivation, information, and hope. God bless you. Starting on Thursday, November 17th, Benedict and I will begin a 3-part study on the virtuous woman from Proverbs 31. This is the most famous passage in the Old Testament related to God's standards for women. But in between the lines, you learn a lot about the virtuous husband as well. Be sure and catch this wonderful study of God's perspective of the ideal woman, beginning on Thursday, November 17th.